In our lesson today, we're going to be starting in chapter 7, and it is percents and fractions. The origin of the word percent, it was a Latin word, which means per or from 100. So actually, percent means out of 100. So notice I have a 100 block as an example. And I'll show you how we'll fill that in just a minute under music. In a marching band competitions, each band is judged on its musical performance, marching and visual effect. At many competitions, a marching band is rated on a 100-point scale. A band that earns 85 points has earned an 85% of the total possible points. So if you were to put that in numbers, it would be 85 over 100, which is equal to 85% because percent means out of 100. And in algebra, you would put P over 100, which is P in percent. So, in your notes, we will show, in that example, that model there, 85%. So, in our visual, we have shaded in 85%. 85 out of 100. So, I just took the grid, and I counted 15, and I counted and I colored in everything but 15 of the small squares. Okay, so in our example, we are asked to write 29% and 45% as fractions in simplest form. Again, since percent means out of 100, we're going to take 29 and put it over 100. And if that is in simplest form, that is your final answer. So in B of 45%, we would put it over 45 over 100, which our final answer would be 9 over 20. In the second section, we're going to write 7/10 and 3/5 as percents. So we have 7 over 10. Since it needs to be in percent form, the fraction will need to be over 100. So we're going to put an equivalent fraction of 70 over 100, and our final answer would be 70%. In example B, we're going to change that to a percent, put it over 100, and then change it to a percent. Now you will have common percents that you'll need to know in your head. A lot of these you do. I have listed there 10% is 1 out of 10. 20% would be 1 out of 5. 25 is 1/4. 30% is 3 out of 10. 40% is 2/5. 50% is 1/2. The rest of these you will know off the top of your head, and there are common percents that you'll be using. But there are some exercises where you will not have those that you can do off the top of your head. In our example, a radio station randomly selects one of 5 finalists for a prize. You are one of the finalists. What is the probability that you will win? Write your answer as a percent. Okay, the probability that you will win will be 1 out of 5, and to express that in a percent would be 20%. You need to show how to do that. You would say something over 100 would be 20 over 100, and that would simplify to 20%. Suppose there are 10 finalists. What is the probability that you will win? Write your answer as a percent. So 1 out of 10, which is equal to 10%. A lot of these I know you can do in your head, so you don't have to show your work on these type of problems. In example 3, we're finding a percent of a number. Well, we're going to talk about tortoises. A desert tortoise can go a year or more without drinking water. When it does drink, its body weight can increase by 40%. Suppose a desert tortoise weighs 15 pounds after a long period without water. How many pounds can the tortoise gain when it drinks? So finding 40% of 15 pounds, you're going to use the fact that 40% is equal to 2/5. Then you're just going to multiply. 40% of 15 is going to be equal to 2/5 times 15 over 1. You may simplify this before you multiply, then it equals 6. So the desert tortoise can gain 6 pounds when it drinks the water. Okay, we have 3 examples to find the percent of a number. I'm going to pause the video. We'll come back and check our answers. Okay, so 25% of 36 is 9. 70% of 7 is 70% of 70 is 49, and 75% of 80 is 60. You also need to look at this with common sense. 1/4 of 36 will be 9. 70% of 70. If you go over 70, you know your answer is wrong because it's a percent of it. So you need to look at these logically also. And this last examples that we have, there's 5 examples. If you are to express the fraction as a percent. So we're going to use ratios to form a type of proportion. So for example, in number 1, we're looking for the percent. So I'm going to put it as a P right here. You're trying to find the percent. So this one you can do it in mental math because you have 20 times 5 is 100. So 17 times 5 is 85, which is going to equal to 85%. Now on 2, 3, and 4, we're not going to be able to do it with mental math, so you're going to use cross products. I'm going to pause the video and we'll come back and check your work. So when we're asked to express each of the fractions as a percent, I've got, on number 1, I've got 17 over 20 is equal to a percent out of 100. So you can do that mentally because 20 times 5 is 100. 17 times 5 is 85. So 17 out of 20 is 85%. And number 2, we cannot do that using equivalent fractions, so we use cross products. 5 times 100 is equal to 12p. 500 is equal to 12p. Divided each side by 12, and we ended up with 41 and 8/12, but simplified that to 41 and 2/3%. So 5 out of 12 is 41 and 2/3%. And number 3, another student of mine had a different way of solving it. What is 3 out of 16? So you're wanting to know what is 3/16 of 100. So he took 3/16 and he multiplied it times 100, then simplified for he multiplied, and ended up with 75 over 4, divided that and got 18 and 3/4. Now, my suggestion is to set them up in proportions, but that is another way that it can be done. But since we've been discussing proportions and discussing ratios, we're now trying to determine percent. I am encouraging you to use the percents as proportions. In our number 4 example, we have 11 out of 75. Again, we cannot do that using equivalent fractions, so cross products were used. And our final answer was 14 and 2/3%, or 14 and 6/10, repeating 14 and 6/10 with a bar notation over the 6. In our number 5 example, you can, again, we're changing that fraction to a percent. We put it over 100, and you can use equivalent fractions to solve for that.